Tell me about how Blue Compass started assembling this data. It seems to me the kind of thing that you would need to have so you could properly advise your clients, but it's of great interest to all of us.
Absolutely. So we have many clients here at Blue Compass that are located, all over the country, but a lot of our clients are here in Iowa and they serve Iowans as their target audience. And so a few years ago, we decided, we needed to get a little more information about how Iowans use the web, about how they searched, how they use social media, et cetera. We looked and we couldn't find any stat on it. We found no market research, no surveys, no studies about the social media habits of Iowans or the online search habits of Iowans. And so we took it upon ourselves, Jeff, to go out there and conduct some market research with hundreds and hundreds of Iowans and just figure out, what are the habits of Iowans online. We knew nationally how people use the web and social media, but not as much Iowans. And so we started to do this probably 5 or 6 years ago. We continually update the study. So it's been really helpful for our clients, but also just interesting in general to see how Iowans use social media and the web and how that differs from nationally.
So what generally are some differences? Do we as Iowans fall in line with national trends, or are there a few highlights of things where Iowa takes a little different path?
Well, some of the stats are very similar, but there are some interesting differences. And one of them is general behaviors of Iowans when they're on social media. And in our research, we found that the number one things Iowans say they do when they are on social media is connecting with friends and family. I think that's very positive. That's fantastic. Whereas nationally, we've seen studies that say the number one thing they do is seek entertainment or, doing something else. So I thought that was kind of cool. And another thing, Jeff, that I found interesting is Iowans say that they overwhelmingly trust local small business on social media, whereas they seem to distrust news and ads and corporations a lot more. So in our research, we found the number one thing that Iowans distrust when it comes to social media is general news content. And that was 46% distrust, which is very high. And local businesses on social media, Iowans say they distrusted only 7%. So that's just overwhelming trust for, smaller community organizations and things like that. And I thought that was kind of cool as well. And it kind of plays into that whole Iowa nice family and friends type of thing.
And it does make sense because, as you said, Iowans use these platforms to connect with people they know. And so, therefore, the local small business is a logical extension of, quote unquote, people they know.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, just like I said, I feel like it plays into that Iowa nice type of thing. As an Iowan, that's something I've always enjoyed is just the general positivity, family orientedness of Iowans.
So if you're a business and you know that just at a base level, your message through social media is going to be received potentially more favorably if you are targeting people in Iowa, what should you do with that knowledge? Because I suppose some would say, well, just flood it, but then that's going to lead to people being overwhelmed and then distrusting.
I think the main thing to do with that knowledge, if you're a local business or a smaller organization, is just be encouraged. Because, a lot of the times, Jeff, we'll have clients that might be smaller businesses or medium-sized businesses, and they'll feel some frustrations because, they don't have the billions and billions of dollars for marketing that some of these large corporations do that are national or that are worldwide. I think it really points to one interesting word that we see more and more when it comes to marketing, which is authenticity. With just the changing landscape over the past few decades where individuals have a bit more of a voice on their own social media platforms or YouTube or their websites, the message is a bit decentralized. I think people are looking more and more for authentic messages. And it makes me think a little bit of, some of the videos I see online, and sometimes the videos that aren't particularly lit well or have the best audio, those sometimes do really fantastic, whereas, the Hollywood productions might not as well. I think we've become really good as a society about telling, when something is real or fake. And when you see an actor these days coming out and, doing an ad and talking about something, I think generally we all know they were paid and they might not believe as strongly in this as they say they do. Whereas if you see, an authentic, real person put up a video on Instagram or a post on a social platform talking about, wow, I really love this brand, or man, this product or service is just fantastic. That means a lot more because they didn't necessarily get paid for it. They're just doing it of their own volition. So I think that authenticity is something we're really starting to see shine through both in social media, but just in marketing in general.
You and I talked a few years ago in the immediate aftermath of COVID when you did a survey, calendar year 2021. So now 2 years later, have you found that usage is different now than it was in the immediate post-COVID environment?
Absolutely. A couple of years ago, there's a lot of turmoil and so much negativity out there. Not that right now it's incredibly positive, but so much negativity out there on social media. It was after the election, COVID stuff was going on. And we saw some platforms decrease usage in Iowa for the first time. And we saw 4% of the people that we surveyed said, hey, I'm done. I'm done with social media. I'm going to go do something else. Today, when we did the research, only 1% of people say they're staying off social media. We surveyed many platforms from Facebook to Snapchat to Instagram to Twitter, now X, to LinkedIn. Every platform we looked at actually grew. Like there's more usage this year than there was a couple of years ago in Iowa. So overall, digital media usage is up. There's just one platform in Iowa that we saw for the first time actually decreased usage, and that's Instagram.
Was it by a sizable enough amount that you're able to draw any conclusion, or is it just enough of a hiccup and that's the outlier, but generally everybody's using more things?
It was a fairly small decrease. It was only about 4 or 5% decrease this year. But it was interesting because, Jeff, over the past 6 years, Instagram is always rising by 10%, 20% every single year. There's been a lot of increase. So we thought it was really fascinating that it actually decreased even just a little bit this year. And so we asked, why would that happen? Why is Instagram usage stagnant or even decreasing? I think it's a good question. One of the reasons we see some people being frustrated with Instagram these days is there's just so many more ads. I mean, you look back a few years ago, there were fewer ads. Instagram's a company, it's owned by Meta. It has to make a profit. So one of the ways it does that is more and more ads. And then there's also been some algorithm changes over the last few years that I think have frustrated some people. And it used to be a chronological timeline where you just see, whoever you're following, the latest post would be in order. Whereas it's a lot more algorithmic now, and it decides what to show you. And I think that's frustrated some people too. So those might be two of the culprits.
Algorithmic or jumbled, in my view, because when I post something, I like to refresh to see that it took, that I did it right. When I'm looking at another platform, whatever I just posted is tops in my feed. Well, with Instagram, it tells you it took, if you will, but it doesn't show up. And it may not show up when you refresh, et cetera, et cetera. So I understand exactly the frustration of that. And like many people in business, I have to use multiple social media platforms because I know my audience uses multiple platforms. How does that square with Iowans in terms of, there are some folks who are dedicated Facebook users, others love Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. Do people have a favorite, and do they tend to use multiple outlets, I guess, either to get a message out or to make sure they don't miss anything?
Believe it or not, Facebook is still the number one social platform in Iowa, and that's higher than national. 87% of Iowans ages 18 to 44 use Facebook. That's a huge percentage. Nationally, that percentage is 74%, so it's a lot less. Iowans love their Facebook for some reason. It's really interesting when you look at 18 to 24-year-olds, the social media usage is a lot more. They spend more time on it, but there's also more platforms they use. They're on like 3 or 4 or 5 different platforms. Whereas you get a little bit older, you get into the 35 to 44-year-olds, they're really only on 2, maybe 3 at most. So generally, the older the Iowan is, the fewer platforms they're on. And of course, Facebook is the number one platform with older Iowans. So it just depends on the age group. But the number one right now with younger Iowans, at least the one they're spending the most time on, is actually Snapchat. We saw a lot of growth in Snapchat over the past couple of years. 37% growth amongst Iowans in Snapchat. And that's huge, which is interesting, I think, to a lot of older Iowans like you or I that aren't necessarily like teenagers or 20 somethings, because I don't use Snapchat much. I have an account and I don't hear a lot about it. But I know both of my boys are teenagers and they don't spend much time at all on social media. They're not interested in it, but they do have some interest in Snapchat, and like all the kids at school are on Snapchat. So that's a very popular platform right now for younger Iowans.
As I think about businesses and they think about where to put resources, and if you go back to the old days of terrestrial radio sales, if you just simply walked in and said, buy this radio station, well, that doesn't take into account the audience for that business. It doesn't take into account what their needs are. We got to the point with consolidation in radio where you might have, in the group I work for, here's an oldie station, here's a rock station, here's a country station, here's a news station. And I, as an account executive, could go to a business and say, who are you trying to reach? And then when you tell me that information as the business owner, I can say where best to place your advertising dollars. I just have this sense, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that people consult you or Blue Compass and say, all right, what should I be on? And they think that one size fits all, like, all right, we'll do Facebook. But it clearly depends on who they are, what their message is, who they're trying to reach. No different than advertising in the past 100 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so clearly, some platforms are more appropriate than others. But one of the things we encourage our clients to do is don't just focus on one platform, diversify a bit. And then at the same time, don't try to be on every platform. You probably don't have the time, the budget, the resources to do every platform really, really well. So you got to diversify a little bit, but don't try to be everything for everyone. I think that's really important. Jeff, the best platform that we've found to reach Iowans is Google search. Just organic Google search, not necessarily paid ads. Those can be good too. But Google is the number one used digital platform of Iowans. 97% of Iowans use Google. And I think one of the reasons that just Google search works so well is that the intent is different when someone goes there than if they go to like a Facebook or an Instagram. On Facebook or Instagram, they're looking to connect with friends and family, whereas on Google, they're looking to satisfy a query. And so if your organization can be the answer to that query, if you can literally be the answer to a question, or your service or product can be, that's incredibly powerful. And so for our clients, in most cases, we see that the best results, the best traffic to their website comes from just organic Google search.
I find that interesting because as I look at the item from the report, Google is at near saturation level, as you said, 97%. But these days, 95% of Iowans text, 94% use email, 94% use Amazon. So a stereotype of some of these folks just walk around with flip phones and don't even know how to use those. I mean, this survey knocks that out of the water because people are certainly receptive to a keyboard, shall we say, in ways that they may not have been even 15 years ago. And that's a great opportunity with the Google search, as you mentioned, because people are already there, whether they're checking their email, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in Boston recently and ran into wonderful people in Boston. But when I talk about Iowa, first of all, a lot of people say, well, where is that? And most of them hadn't been to the Midwest. And someone even asked me, well, why would you want to live in Iowa? Sometimes people on the coast look at Iowa and they don't understand it. And they think it's just a bunch of cornfields. And a lot of it is cornfields, but there's incredibly intelligent, resourceful people here, incredibly hardworking people here. And Iowans get technology. Like, this isn't rocket science to us. Iowans are using technology proficiently, and even older Iowans are very savvy generally with social media and the web. So it's not that much different from someone might think on the coasts.